Hey guys, today we're going to go over setting up an Altoids Survival Kit. So it's basically a mini survival kit that you keep in an Altoids can like this one. So it basically is just a can of mints or a tin of mints that you can pick up at the store. It costs a few dollars. I've already emptied out the mints, and it's not plastic or anything. It's actually made of metal. It's pretty nice. Most people just throw them away, but they're really useful for all sorts of different things. One of those things is building mini survival kits. Important to note that it's not a full-sized kit, and it's not a replacement for carrying a full-sized kit with you. If you know you're going to be in a survival situation, you probably should carry a full-sized kit, but this is useful just to have with you all the time, or just stow it away in your glove compartment, or keep it in your boat, or if you don't want to carry a pack, you could just slip it in your pocket. Maybe you're just going on a quick hike and something comes up, something happens, there's an emergency. You have it there, and you don't have to worry about, oh, do I have space to carry this? Nothing like that, because it's so small and compact. You can literally just slip it in your back pocket and go. You can waterproof it by a lot of people do is they'll put electrical tape or duct tape around the edge so that it effectively waterproofs it. And a lot of people will put like a rubber band around the outside to make sure it stays closed, which is probably a smart idea. I'd actually recommend doing both of those things if you use one of these. So you can do a lot with that. Let's go over the things that we're actually going to put in here. Probably the first thing that comes up is a mini multi-tool. So I picked up this thing, Swiss Tech. It's a pretty decent tool. It actually serves the purpose of two of the items on the list. It has a little mini flashlight, and it's also a multi-tool, which has pliers, all sorts of other things on it. Knife blade, can opener. Not as good as like a full-size multi-tool, of course, but you wouldn't be able to fit a full-size multi-tool inside one of these things. So for what you can fit inside an Altoids can, it's pretty decent. If I were to do it again, I probably wouldn't get this one. I might shop around a little bit more, maybe pick up a Leatherman. The one thing I didn't like about this is kind of neat is the flashlight's built into us, but I feel like the tool itself could be a whole lot more compact if you didn't have this light on it, and the light would be compact by itself. I don't know if you'd overall save more space, but I just don't like how this light functions. And I think that's part of the fact that it's just built into the tool. In order to actually turn this light on, you have to actually tighten. This is where you put the batteries in. You put the batteries in and tighten the bulb on it, and you just have to tighten it a little bit more to actually turn the light on. So to turn the light off, you have to make it a little bit loose, and if it jiggles around a little bit, the light turns on, battery burns out really fast. It's kind of a real pain, and it's not really that great. I'd really just prefer this to be a separate light with a little button that you can click. And I'd like this to be a little bit more solid and a little bit just better. It's not bad, it works, especially for something this size, and I'm really just being more critical of the knife. The knife itself is, and the pliers, it's pretty solid. It's a pretty decent tool. Could be maybe slightly better, but still pretty decent for its size. And I would prefer to have this light separate. I'd prefer to have other smaller tools in here and just have this light separate. I think maybe it would take a little bit more space, not that much, and I think we could spare at least that much space. So that's that. Decent blade, not sharp at all. Not really going to cut me unless I really tried. Might want to sharpen it, but that's true for a lot of knives. So there's that. We'll fold this guy up and get it ready to pack it away. We're going to try to pack everything that we can in here today. Next, moving on, we have a small Bic lighter. Basic lighter. Very, very useful tool. A lot of people tell you, you're supposed to always carry matches and so on, because a lighter could get wet, it won't function in low temperatures. Lighter actually, if you are somewhere where it really is that ridiculously cold, which a lot of people are, you can actually get past that problem by putting it under your arm and warming it up a little while. Well, whether or not you want to do that, that's another story. But in most cases, this works really well. If it gets wet, you can dry it out. So it's generally really versatile, and I definitely recommend having one. Plus, it's so tiny, you can just fit it right in there very easily. And you could start hundreds of fires with this. Whereas the matches, you can only start as many fires as you have matches. So, like with these matches, if I have 5 matches, I have 5 shots to start a fire. Whereas with the lighter, I have hundreds of shots to start a fire. So if I mess it up or there's a lot of wind, I have hundreds of tries to get it right. Moving on to the matches. These matches, I would actually recommend bringing both matches and a lighter. These are actually probably the best matches you can get. These are storm matches or lifeboat matches, depending on what you want to call them. These ones are labeled as storm matches. They're really great as far as matches go. They'll light when they are wet. So if everything here were to get wet, these should still light. I've actually done another video where I light one of these, catches on fire. You can dip it in water, it'll go out, you pull it out of the water, and it reignites itself. So these are pretty awesome for that. Beyond that, also brought a striker for these matches. These are not strike anywhere, you do need a striker. So these are a few little pads. They're really small and compact. You can just stick them in there. If you wanted to get elaborate, you might actually tape these on the inside, or just leave them loose, up to you. But yeah, you are going to need a striker to go along with the matches. And the matches actually came in this container here. So yeah, it comes with this, comes with a bunch of matches and a striker on the side. So that's how you would normally do it. Obviously, we're not bringing this entire container. This is what I would normally store them in. It's nice and waterproof and pretty excellent all around. But yeah, this is obviously not going to fit in the Altoids tin. So this is out. We're only going to carry 5 matches. You'd probably do more if you wanted, but we're going to stick with 5. So that's 2 fire starting methods. And we also have a ferro rod. This striker comes with a small little striker. This does work. I feel like I might do a little bit better with a larger knife, but this is what we have. I think this striker actually works a little bit better than this guy, but it's what we have, and it works. So this will work in the cold. It should work if it's wet. I haven't tested that. It's a little bit harder to start a fire with this than with either of the other 2 methods, the lighter or the matches, but it's a third method, and it's good to have multiple ways of doing the same thing. It's a little bit redundant, especially for a pack that we're trying to keep as compact as this, but that's okay. What else? In terms of fire starting, we have a small birthday candle. This is nice. If you're having trouble starting something, you could just light the candle first. It'll burn for a while, giving you time to actually get a fire started or do whatever you need, which is very useful. It's nice, but if I were starting a fire, I would probably be using this and just holding the flame out as long as I need. Either way works, though. What else? You could use this for light if you wanted to. I probably wouldn't, but you could. So it's a tiny thing that you can just throw in there, and it has a lot of potential use. The other fire starting thing I have are cotton balls. About 5 of them is about what I think I could squeeze in there. These can be compacted down really small, and they light very, very easily. A lot of people will tell you dryer lint is good, but I think cotton balls are actually a little bit better than dryer lint. Actually, they almost always are. Dryer lint could be made from less flammable. It depends on the clothing that you're actually drying at the time. So how flammable it is may vary a little bit. Whereas cotton balls are consistent. They light easily every time. You can pull these apart, build a nice huge ball of tinder for each one of those. And that's one thing that the ferro rod will light very easily, are the cotton balls. So yeah, those go together really well. If you wanted to make it even better, you might wrap one of these in plastic. You might dip these in a flammable liquid like petroleum jelly, and then wrap them in plastic and then stick them in there. And so long as you seal it with plastic properly, no mess, you should be okay, and that'll give you a huge head start and make things a whole lot easier when starting a fire. Especially if it's windy, wet, or rainy. So moving on, let's jump over to Band-Aids. So we have a few different types of just regular standard Band-Aids. I had 2 different brands, no specific reason. They're a little bit different. I think these are a little bit more heavy duty. Any case, for Band-Aids, they're flat, don't take a lot of space. You can just fit them right in there nice and easily. Those are just regular generic Band-Aids. Also, you want to bring butterfly Band-Aids. So these are more meant to like hold together a cut, like say if you had a big gash in your arm or whatever, or anywhere. If you had like a big deep cut, these would basically pull the cut together, and basically that they're just meant to hold things together a little bit more than a regular Band-Aid. So if you can see, they basically they'll hold on this side and this side, nothing really in the middle. It's just to pull things together, and that's it. Just good to have those also. And then we have alcohol swabs. These are really, really useful for multiple things. Now, if you do get hurt, these are great to have. You can clean your wounds so you can avoid getting infected, which if you are in a survival situation, the last thing you need is an infection. So yeah, keep clean with these. Bring at least a couple of them. Also, let's say if you had to give yourself stitches or something, you do want to sterilize it first. We do have needles in the kit and thread, and if you were stitching up a wound, you're going to want to sterilize first. That said, there are more uses for these also. You can actually use these to start a fire. So these can be used as a liquid accelerant. So yet another fire starting tool. Really excellent to have. And from here, let's move on to paper clips. You can do all sorts of things with them. You can use them for like repairing equipment, fixing things. You can bend them in all different shapes and stuff. You can use them to bind things together, twist things together, hook onto things. You can use them to create hooks, and maybe for like building little parts for traps or something. You might be able to use them to make a fishing hook, probably. You could probably get something done with that using the pliers on this thing, but you might be better off. I mean, we have a ton of fishing hooks here in the kit already, which I would use before that. But it's just a general all-around versatile thing that's just really nice to have in a kit, and they're really small, so why not? For fishing, we have sinkers. We have large sinkers and small sinkers, and a whole bunch of them. I taped the small ones together. The large ones aren't taped together. They're just loose in the pack, which is fine. 2 different types of swivels, a whole bunch of each. We have large ones and small ones. All different sizes of fishing hooks, which is pretty useful. They're all really, really small and fit in the kit nice and easily. So I just included a ton of them. If you wanted to, I mean, you might just pick, a big one, a medium one, and a big one, a medium one, and a small one. If you really want to cut the size down and make things more compact. But in this case, I went with a whole bunch of them. And we do have fishing string, so you won't have to use the thread for that. Thread could be used for just about anything. Including fishing string if you wanted, or just to bind anything together, or for pretty much anything. But the fishing string is, this is just wrapped around, it's not a spool, so there's less space wasted. I just wrapped it around a little piece of stick here, and then put tape on it so the string doesn't come off. But this is probably about 50 feet worth of string. Not sure how many meters off the top of my head for those of you outside the US, but it's a good length of fishing string. So, and that's a good source of food if you're anywhere near water and the fish are biting. there's a good chance you can catch fish if you have hooks and fishing string. I did put fishing lures on my list, but I don't think they're really all that necessary. If you had a really small one, you might want to put 1 or 2 in the kit. You could do that optionally. I don't think it's completely necessary. You could probably come up with some type of lure using natural materials outside, or just use live bait if you can dig something up or find something. Depending on the type of fish, you might even get them to bite the hook with nothing. We have needles, great for like sewing up a wound if you really have to. Just make sure you know what you're doing and you sterilize it first. Don't get yourself infected, and be smart about it, I guess. And they probably have plenty of other uses also. What else do we have here? We have safety pins. These are great to have on you. I've included 2 large ones and a whole bunch of small ones. You could use these to hold a wound together in an emergency. A little bit less clean than sewing something up. I'd only do that if you really had to hold something closed and you had no other way of doing it. It's not medical advice. I'm not a doctor. You might make things worse. So yeah, don't take my advice on that. But a potential use for it. Another safer use might be just to like let's say if your clothing is ripped, or maybe you have like a ripped tent or any number of things like that. You can bind things together really easily with these. And another use for these is creating fishing hooks, which we already have tons of them, but let's say you lost these, or maybe you just didn't have them in your kit. You can bend these into a fishing hook. These actually make really excellent fishing hooks. You take the pliers on this guy and just bend this into an actual hook. And you don't even really need a barb on the end. A lot of times when I do fish, I'll just remove the barb just to do like less damage to the fish in case I'm throwing it back. If I were in a survival situation and I were hungry, I wouldn't care so much about removing the barb, and I would care more about keeping the fish. I would probably keep the barb on the hooks, which I'm doing in this case. As far as this, not worth trying to put a barb on it, but you could bend it into a hook and use it as a hook just fine. You don't need a barb to catch a fish. So there's that. Let's say if all you had was like dental floss and maybe thread, and in one of these things, you could probably catch some fish with it. You wouldn't need the fishing string, the sinkers, or the hooks. Let's see, what else do we have here? Tweezers, mostly just because they're small. You could pull out like a splinter or something off the top of my head. That's one excellent use case for tweezers. And they probably have tons of other uses that would come up. They're generally just a versatile, nice thing to have on you. Recommended for the kit. So I think that's just about everything. There's a compass. Compass is useful. We could actually get something much smaller than this. I actually don't even like this one that much. I like my full size. I have a much nicer compass I'll do another video on, but it wouldn't fit in here, and this one does fit into the Altoids tin. This is not a bad compass. It's not perfect either. Just make sure it doesn't get stuck when you turn it. You don't want to like turn it and have the needle get stuck and end up walking in the complete wrong direction. It seems to work pretty well though. And yep, it's compact. It does fit nicely inside this kit. But if you wanted to save space, you could definitely get something smaller. They have much smaller compasses out here that available that you can buy. So yeah, you might want to get something smaller if you wanted to optimize the kit a little bit. Actually, one last thing to cover. You want a bag. I have it listed as an MRE beverage bag to be specific, but you could use any type of plastic bag. Because one of the things that's often neglected in these small mini Altoids survival kits is something to carry water. So you really do want to be able to carry water. So if you were to try to attempt to purify water with water purification tablets or iodine drops or anything, you need something to put the water in. And you're going to realize that's a problem pretty quick when you actually do try to go get water. So you'll need at least something to carry it in. You theoretically could use this thing, but you're not going to be able to carry very much water, and it's going to be really tedious. It's going to make it a whole lot harder. So if you didn't have a bag, you could use this for water. And the positive thing about that is you could actually boil your water in here. For a normal kit, I would recommend 2 ways of purifying water. First, just boiling the water, because it's simple, repeatable, and so long as you have a metal cup, you can just keep, or cup or pot or whatever, you can just keep boiling water over and over and purifying as much water as you need. You could also use a pump or a life straw or something like that. Those have limited use, but will also get you a lot of water, and they'll last a pretty good amount of time. Those are also good solutions. None of that stuff fits in here. You're not going to fit a cup in here. You're not going to fit a life straw. Pretty much none of that stuff. The only thing you might fit in here are water purification tablets, which is fine. It's a small kit. It's not really a replacement for a full-sized kit. So I normally wouldn't recommend the tablets. But in this case, that's the method you would use for this kit. That's the one thing I don't have here in front of us, because it's not something I would normally use. I normally just boil or use a pump or a life straw. But in making a kit like this, you probably would want to have water purification tablets, and that's the one thing I don't have for this video today. But you would want those, because they'll fit in the kit, and you can use them with a bag. So that brings us to what this is. This is just a regular plastic bag. You could get any type. You could get one like for sandwiches, or a Ziploc bag or whatever. This is one that like vegetables came in from the store. Really plain. You could scoop water in it. Obviously you can't cook the water in it, so you would have to rely on tablets. This big bag that can hold probably a fair amount of water can be compacted down really, really small, and that's what we're going to try to do today. So I'm going to wrap this thing right up, make sure I don't damage it. I would almost want to tape this, but tape will damage this really, really, really easily. And let's see here. There we go. Plastic bag added to our kit. And that should kind of take care of water, minus the tablets. So that's everything we have here. One other thing I'd want to go over that I'm not going to include in the kit today, but that you might want to have, is dental floss. So I have a pack right here. The spool is pretty large. I don't think it takes up a huge amount of space. I don't think it's going to fit in there. I know I've seen smaller ones. I could swear I've seen smaller spools that would fit in there nicely. If you can't find one, you might want to take something like this and wrap it around a stick like this. You could get a pretty good length of dental floss around a stick like this if you wanted. We're not doing that today because I don't think we need it, at least today, but that's one optional thing you could add to optimize the kit. We already have 2 different types of cordage. We have the fishing string and the thread. I would not want to waste the fishing string on anything but fishing, because that's kind of a really important thing, and if you do have the fishing string for fishing, keep it for that. That's one of the most useful things you could use it for. I wouldn't use it to tie things together or anything unless you really, really had to. I would use the thread for that, but the problem with the thread is that it is not very strong, definitely nowhere near as strong as the fishing string, whereas dental floss is pretty strong. Dental floss will hold relatively well, and definitely a lot better than the thread, so that is an advantage. That's one reason I could justify having 3 different types of cordage: the fishing line, thread, and dental floss. I would recommend probably having all three of those in your kit. That said, there's a few other things we're missing. I mentioned the lures. I don't have any lures in here. You could add those optionally, though they're not really that necessary and they take up space. You could add a wire saw. Now, a wire saw will give you a really excellent way of cutting things, getting closer to the level of functionality you might get with like a Bowie knife or a hatchet or something, or like a real saw, but something small that you could fit in here, because you're not exactly going to be hacking down trees or chopping branches with the blade on this guy. This is just not going to be sufficient for hacking down branches and stuff. So you're not going to be able to cut a lot of live wood with what you have here. I have seen people get small fixed blade knives that will fit in here, but even still, so you could optimize it with that also. But even still, you're not going to be able to really hack down branches or anything like that. So any shelter, this also doesn't provide you with any form of shelter. There's no rain poncho, no emergency blanket, none of that. So even like the bare minimum things that you could use to construct an emergency shelter aren't here. So you're going to be building your shelter out of pretty much whatever you can find out in the wilderness. Tree branches, like pine needles and leaves and dirt and stuff like that, which should work totally fine and everything, but you're not going to be able to hack down live branches, so you're going to be like searching for dead branches that you can break without any tools. What else? Also listed on the list were a mirror for signaling and a whistle. Those are really useful. They could be useful anytime you're lost and you want to signal someone, but they're even more useful if you're like on a let's say you're stuck on a life raft in the middle of the ocean. They become a whole lot more useful and a whole lot more relevant in that situation than like if you're just lost in the woods somewhere. I'd say they're like the lowest priority things you might want to put in your kit. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but that's just how I view them. Definitely we could use a wire saw. So the two important things we don't have that we should are the wire saw and water purification tablets. You might want to have a small fixed blade knife, and you might want to have a small folding knife that has a little bit bigger of a blade than this multi-tool. So a couple other things you could add if you wanted. And that's about it. That pretty much covers everything. So let's put this together and see if it fits. Off the top of my head, I don't know that this ferro rod is going to fit. So I'm a little bit hesitant to actually cut this off, and I didn't want to get one smaller. The next rod I get is actually probably just going to be bigger than this, if anything. This actually, I actually know this won't fit, but even if you stick this diagonally, you know what, maybe we can make this fit. Let's see what we can do, but really you might want to cut this like just a little bit just to make it fit perfectly. Let's see, maybe I want to stick this guy in there first, just to see. And it does fit. I don't know if this will close after that. Alright, so we can force it closed with my ferro rod. It closes a whole lot more nicely without the ferro rod in there. I think I'm going to go for it and see if I can fit everything else in there. It's a little bit more of a stretch now. Yeah, that's going to be a problem. So right away we have our first failure. The ferro rod is definitely too big. So that's not happening. So we're gonna build probably an incomplete kit today, which is fine. I guess the one takeaway being simply that if we do want to use this ferro rod in this kit, you're gonna have to cut it. So this is all just a plastic handle, gives you less to grip. That's fine. Should still work fine. you'll have to cut a little bit off the handle. No big deal, but that's pretty much that. I'll start off with these. Stick some bandages in there. Stick the knife in, lighter. You know what, this is going to be a little bit more of a challenge than I thought. After all that, we're still getting mostly everything. Mostly everything. Getting the matches. Hopefully we can do that without damaging them. And I'm starting to see why only having a few fishing hooks might be a good idea. So you can fit quite a good amount of useful stuff in here, but it is still limited in terms of space. One of the first things I might want to sacrifice are the swivels. Definitely going to want fishing line. Alright, so no ferro rod. The ferro rod takes up practically no space for just the rod. And if we could put it like this, I think we wouldn't have to sacrifice the ferro rod. If we could actually just cut it right like this and not place it diagonally, cut a bigger chunk off. To go diagonally, cut a little chunk, but that just wouldn't fit with everything else. I'm thinking just like this, and just cut like a bigger chunk off the end right there. I think that's what we would need to do to make this kit work. Don't know that that's going to happen. I also think I might want to find some way to make sure I keep the heads of these matches safe. I have these lead weights in here that could probably damage the matches. I don't know, but something to watch out for. Alright, so thread is not going in there. We could put this amount of thread in here, not on the spool. This is a huge waste of space. Yeah, this is not going to work. This is way too huge of a waste of space, and this whole thing, while it does fit in, not with all this other stuff in here. We're going to have to sacrifice this guy. And I'm just going to sacrifice the swivels for now, because it's just going to make it too... They're small, but it's going to make it too tight, and they're totally unnecessary. I mean, yeah, we don't need the swivels. If I do use these needles, I'm putting them in last. And I might just grab one of the large pins. Yeah, I don't know if this is happening. I could have packed this a little bit better, maybe. Nope. Alright, sacrificing the tweezers. I think those are lower priority. Birthday candle's fine, although I almost want to not have that in there. I'm going to throw in a few needles, which are barely noticeable. Grab a couple larger safety pin or paper clips, a couple large safety pins. Not fitting in the compass. We might be able to get by if we had a smaller compass. Stick this guy over here. We can do the ferro rod, but we're not going to today. So that I actually feel bad about. Not so much these other guys, but the ferro rod. Kind of feel bad not being able to include that. And we totally could if we were to cut the handle. Going to leave these guys over here. We do want the bag. That's one thing we don't want to skimp on. Water's pretty important. And these take up almost no space, and they should conform to, I don't know if that's happening. Yeah, we could do it. We could take those out, and this would close nicely. But if we want to force this closed, all right, so there we go. We could hold this closed with a rubber band and have all of that in there. So that would be it. I have to hold this closed with my hands now. It's gonna pop open otherwise. A rubber band would hold that in place and give you all of these things. If we were to take these out, which I would not recommend, at the very least you want the bag. Actually, let's try this. See if we can do the bag and no cotton. Yeah, the cotton's really nice if you want to start a fire, but it's strictly not really necessary. So long as you can find tinder, you should be fine. So take the string out, stick the bag here. Let's see if we can close this without a rubber band, including the bag. Alright, so kind of stays closed, doesn't lock in place. I don't think that's really just the bag, I think it's a lot of the other stuff in there too, but it's a little bit better than with the cotton swab, so I think this is what I'm going to call the final product. I feel like I'm kind of cheating if I try to squeeze these in and really force it closed, but there we go. This is what we have, and this is what we left out. Plus, we would really want some water purification tablets in there. So that's that. We could have optimized it a little bit better. We could have done a better job, but this was not bad. So that's it. That's our mini Altoids Survival Kit. That's pretty much everything. That's all I have to cover, really. If you like this, if you thought it was interesting, like the video, give us a thumbs up, maybe subscribe to the channel. If you didn't like it, or if you did, whatever your thoughts are, feel free to comment on the video. If you think I could do something better, post it down in the comments. Tell me what I could have done differently. Tell me why I was wrong, or why I did a good job, a bad job, whatever. Comment away. Until next time, thanks guys.